Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate everybody coming. We're going to start the broadcast in a few minutes, and just hang tight for a little bit, and we'll get started in 1 or 2 minutes. Thanks. Okay, it's around noon. We really appreciate everyone joining us, considering the World Cup action with USA Germany, and we won't tell you who we're favoring, but it starts with USA. So, we appreciate everyone joining. We will be recording this webinar so people can catch it on the replay or download it later. I just wanted to introduce Chris Kolodziejski, our product manager, and I'm Peter Sineski. I'm the co-founder of MetaVis. Today's topic is talking about OneDrive for Business, migrations made easy. So with the recent announcement of the ability to add 1 terabyte of content per OneDrive, the possibilities of what you can take advantage of from a storage perspective and sharing perspective within OneDrive by Microsoft are really endless. It's a tremendous value. I'm sure we've only begun to see the tidal wave of information that's going to begin to flow into those repositories. And MetaVis, as usual, is here to help manage your information. So just a little bit about MetaVis from that perspective. But basically, we are a gold software vendor. We have offices around the world in different places, and we deal with lots of large clients. We have products for smaller entry-level SMBs, and we try to get ourselves involved with any type of customer who needs to manage information, whether it's migration or reclassification or analysis or backup of that data. We really would like to have a tool set for them to manage that information. Many of our new customers come from Office 365, so specifically SharePoint Online and OneDrive, and we really appreciate those customers going on our 6th year of business. Again, we have an information management platform, so it's agentless. There's nothing to install in the source or target servers. You run this from your workstation or a server, and it covers various different things that people need to do to manage information. So, getting that information into the new repository, restructuring that information, ensuring that you have proper security permissions in place as people begin to share that information out, and it comes up in search results. And also the data protection part of that. Should somebody leave and maliciously deleting the information, or it exits the recycle bin, we provide tooling for managing all that information, specifically with SharePoint, OneDrive, and Office 365. Just a little bit about our principles of software design and approach is we try to make it easy to install, easy to use. It's a single platform. A lot of the tools that you'll see today come with various suite packages where they can be added on very easily, just a click of the button. There's nothing else to install, it's all controlled by licensing. And we've heavily invested. We have weekly release format, so every week there's something new that's either added to the product, and that really aligns well with Microsoft's Office 365 release cadence, which is very quick. Sometimes they release once a week or once every few weeks, and there's always something new, or they've made some change, and you want to make sure you work with a vendor who's on top of those changes and incorporating the new features and functionality into their platform. So with that, Chris, I would love to hand it off to you if you want to take control, and you could talk a little bit about OneDrive and how MetaVis can help.
Excellent. Thank you, Peter. Let me share out my screen, and we'll get into it. So again, thank you everybody for your time. We'll try to get you out of here before the second half starts. Couple of quick things we'll talk about today. Obviously, we'll talk about Metaphase Platform dealing with specifically OneDrive. The security, the administration, the backup, all that stuff to allow you to get a better grip on or better understanding of how people, if using it, and if they are, how they're using it. So a lot of insight that we'll talk about today, and we'll show you a couple of quick scenarios to give you an idea about how the tool works. But before we get into the MetaVis portion of the discussion, what I'd like to do is to just really quickly just slide across my browser here and just give, for the people who are relatively new to the OneDrive, maybe not familiar with it at all, or just dipping their toes into it, just give a quick 1 or 2 minute tour of OneDrive just to show you what it looks like. Everybody's familiar with it, I apologize, but I'll try to make this brief as well. But what you're seeing here in my browser is OneDrive through the browser, so I'm not looking at my sync local drive. This is just looking at right through my browser. But this is essentially a OneDrive in Office 360, OneDrive for Business in Office 365. What people think of it as is personal storage. If you're coming from a legacy SharePoint, similar to your My Sites, much more advanced, much more features, much more functionality, but it has the similar type of approach as a My Site did in some of those legacy SharePoint deployments. But it acts as a central hub for your data inside of Office 365, whether it be SharePoint or here in the OneDrive side. And your data could be data that you own, could be the content that you upload, your files, your folders, your personal documents, anything like that that you're working on that you personally own. It could be data that's shared with you, so it could be shared from the SharePoint space, or it could be shared from one of your colleagues' OneDrive. So you'll also be able to access all that data in the Share With Me section. So any of the documents or folders that they share out with you, it'll certainly appear here, and you'll be able to access it through your OneDrive. It also has some nice things for follow documents. If you're following documents, you can see that it has some suggestions based off of different metrics that Microsoft uses to recommend different documents that might be interested in you based off of prior experience. So you can come through here and you can follow those. It gives a nice social experience with inside of document management. And then the site folder section also acts as a way for you to work and interact with the SharePoint side. So if people are sharing lists or sites with you, you can access all of those right here through your OneDrive using your site folders view, which gives you a glimpse into any of those different locations. And clicking on these will take you to either that shared OneDrive that you have access to or that location in your SharePoint Online space. So it gives you a nice way to organize or just to bring all of your data together, whether it's shared with you, owned with you, or and enhances the collaborative experience with inside of your Office 365 tenant. Okay. For people who are coming from Google, Box, Dropbox, we have a lot of people who are moving over into the Microsoft world. That it looks differently. So the users, the way in which you interact with the content may be slightly different than what you may be used to in Box world or Google Drive world. But we certainly do have a lot of people coming across, and we'll show you a couple of quick examples of that in just a moment as well. Okay. I won't get into the known limitations. You're probably all aware of it, 20,000 items for syncing, things like that. All of that stuff is well documented, and you're probably aware of that. But there are some limitations when it comes to OneDrive that you definitely want to check out. One thing I do like to point out really quickly is we do have an app that's available as well through the SharePoint store. This works 100% with SharePoint Online or the OneDrive for Business. So as part of the onboarding experience or as a tool that you can deploy to your end users to allow them to manage their own data within inside of their OneDrives or their SharePoint sites, it does have a nice seamless integration with the OneDrive or SharePoint ribbon and gives you some of that enhanced functionality. Bulk upload, great way if you want to pass out a tool, very simple, very easy to use, that you can have users bulk upload all of their own personal content into their own personal OneDrives. It just gives you a nice simple interface to come through here. This will work with files, it'll work with folders, it'll work in IE, Chrome, Firefox, whatever browser you're used to, and you just simply come through here and select a bunch of data, and it bulk onboards it into your OneDrive for you. And then gives you a couple of other enhanced functionality, copy, move, classification, things like that. This is a relatively new app. It's only been in the store. The store's only been around for a little bit of time, but relatively new app, couple of months old. Lots of new features, lots of new functionality coming to the app, as well as the client tool, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. So stay tuned for some of those new releases in the near future as well. Okay, so let's slide this back across, and let's get into the MetaVis portion. So a couple of things here that MetaVis provides for the OneDrive for Business. A couple of key components. So there's 4 key components that the toolset, the suite, encompasses. First is the onboarding of your data. So if you're just starting from fresh and you don't have any data, which is not a very common scenario, obviously you're going to skip this part. But a lot of people are coming mostly from file shares. A lot of people have a whole bunch of file shares, mapped drives, your local P drive or X drive, that's your personal drive that's stored on some file server somewhere in IT. That's the most common scenario. You want a quick way for an administrator to grab all that data and just push it into the person's OneDrive on their behalf. Could be Google Drive, as we mentioned, could be legacy My Sites, could be SharePoint content, other people's OneDrives. Any type of data movement, getting the content into OneDrive is really the first key component, and that's where we'll start right here. Okay, so here is the MetaVis platform. This is the full platform, so lots of different products, lots of different functionality. We're going to talk just about a few of those today, but we certainly have more information on our website if there's questions about that. Within the console itself, it is a client tool, as Peter mentioned, so it is running on my laptop. It would run on some computer that you want to use. It could be your own personal workstation. It could be a server in your IT department that you want to log into and use. But it will get deployed to some computer, physical or virtual, if you want to use a Hyper-Vs or things like that. Okay, and this will allow you to connect into your Office 365 tenant. If you're a global administrator, it'll allow you to go through and enumerate through all of your different users' OneDrives. It's very simple to connect. You just simply click Connect. You choose your Office 365 tenant. Put in the URL to your SharePoint Admin Center. So if you don't know it, go and grab it. It will give you an example here. And you'll put in that URL. You'll put in your user ID and password. This will be a global administrator. And then the tool will go out and it'll give you the option whether you want to connect to the SharePoint side, to the OneDrive side, or both. For the purpose of today's conversation, we're looking at the OneDrive for Business side. So as it goes out, it'll list all of the currently provisioned OneDrive for Business accounts in your tenant and allow you to go in and access those if you choose to. So it gives you a way to see them and navigate through them. And that's where you can do a number of options that we'll see in just a few moments. Okay. If you are not a global administrator, there are ways in which we can also configure the tool so that you can, for example, if you're a department head, you're the head of the HR department or the legal team, or you want to do it on the behalf of a colleague of yours or your small team that you manage, there are ways in which you can configure the tool so that you do not have to be a global administrator. Global administrator is, of course, the easiest one because that'll give you access to everything. So for the purposes of today, we'll assume that you are a global administrator, and we can certainly address some of those questions later on if they come up. So starting with the first piece, the onboarding, I'll show you just a couple of quick scenarios. Don't have time to run through them all, but most common is bulk uploading from file shares. So you have a very simple interface here. This will allow you, on behalf of all of your end users, to upload their file share data. Requires no intervention from the end users. You don't need to know their logins. You don't need to know their passwords. You don't need any of that stuff. You just need to simply know where their drive exists within inside of your infrastructure, and you need to know who they are in Office 365, their login, their email address. And you go through and you just simply configure the wizard. So let me just drop in my credentials very quick here. The URL that you will use pretty regularly through the console when you're working with OneDrive for Business will be your SharePoint Admin Center URL, which will look similar to ours, obviously not MetaVis Tech. but it'll look similar. So it'll be yourdomain-admin.sharepoint.com, and that'll allow you to go out and connect into that. For your file share migrations, the second parameter that's required is the mapping. And what you're telling the tool, if I slide across this mapping file, looks similar to this. You'll have two columns in your spreadsheet. Column A will be all of your network drives, and column B will be whose OneDrive you want to upload into based off their email login. And that's what tells the tool to go to this location and then take all of the data in there and upload it into that person's OneDrive. Okay, so very simple there, and you just load that file in. Gives you a nice view. It does a couple other things for you. It checks, it'll crawl through and check, just do a quick validation process, make sure that all of your users are valid. Maybe you made a typo, maybe you forgot to provision that user. Whatever the case is, it is checking to make sure that all of the users are valid. If they're not, you'll see them very clearly. Then you can go back and correct that. Perhaps it's not Tony Franks, it's T Franks. So I can go into the spreadsheet and make that change and rerun the validation process. It also checks to see if the OneDrives currently exist. And this will allow you to see, yes, the person has provisioned their own OneDrive, or no, the person has not. If they have, great. If they have not, no problem as well. You'll just simply see a no in this column, and then this option on the bottom will become enabled. What this tells the tool is that you want to provision that OneDrive on behalf of that end user. So it gives you the ability to also create or provision those OneDrives during the upload process. All right, and then on the second page is just a really small set of simple options here. If you want to include folders, if you want to overwrite content, perhaps it already exists. Filtering, probably the most used option here on this section. This allows you to be specific about the data that you want to include. So perhaps you want to exclude all of the MP3 files that people may keep there. Might not be the best use of your OneDrive for Business space, so let's exclude the MP3 files, large AVI files, things like that that may not be appropriate inside of the OneDrives. So you have any number of parameters here that'll look at all of that data before it's uploaded, based off of file extension, modification dates, size parameters. Size is another consideration you have to take into place when dealing with OneDrive in the cloud. So you can configure any number of filters here, and that'll allow you to be very specific about just the data that you want to upload into your tenant, into your OneDrives. Okay, and then you simply click Finish. Finish starts the operation. Pretty quick. Tool's multi-threaded, does parallel processing, so it's not just doing one drive at a time, then the next drive, the next drive. It does many drives simultaneously, giving you a nice performance boost. So it's a relatively quick process to get all of that data into your OneDrive space. There's also some analysis built in, optional, if you want to go through known limitations that the people on the call will probably know about. Invalid characters, blocked extensions, file path lengths. Things like that can also be identified pre-migration if you choose to run it, and it'll give you some of that information available so that you can make better judgments. Invalid characters are replaced during upload, so it won't be a concern if you have those type of file names or folder names. The tool will compensate them for you automatically as that data is onboarded. Okay, really quick, just a couple of the other onboarding scenarios that we do support. Google Drives, again, very similar interface here. Connect to Google, connect to your Office 365 tenant, select the drives you want to migrate, choose a couple of options, and click Finish. And it'll allow you to do that in bulk. Take all of those Google Drives and now migrate them over to their corresponding OneDrive for Business. So very, very similar wizards scattered about for the purposes of getting all of the data into OneDrives on behalf of all of your end users. Okay, so that's the first component, the content onboarding. Once you are in OneDrive for Business, your people are using them, they're actively using them, maybe not actively using them. The second key component of this suite is the administration of the analytics, the security component. This is where you're going to run and see just exactly who's using them. how they're using them, what type of data, who they're sharing it with. It gives you that type of analytical information across all of your OneDrives so that you have a better insight and you have a better experience. You have more controls, if you choose to use them, over how your OneDrive for Businesses are being consumed by your end users. So what this tool is designed, it's designed to be fully automated. So you go out and you schedule data collections with whatever frequency you want. It could be once a day, once a week, once every 3 days, wherever you decide. But you go in there and you're collecting data. And what that means is the tool is going to go to your tenant. It's going to crawl through all of your OneDrive for Businesses that are currently provisioned, of course. And it gathers a whole bunch of information about those OneDrives and then brings it back into MetaVis. And MetaVis then renders a bunch of dashboards and reports so that this gives you that type of insight. And it gives you information about the content, the data composition, who's storing what kinds of documents, who's storing their entire MP3 collection in their OneDrive, who's storing large files, who's using their OneDrive, who's not, who's sharing it, and with whom. It gives you that type of information across all of your OneDrives. You can do the aggregated totals. As you're seeing here, this will be across all of your OneDrives, whether it be 10 or 500 or 5,000. It's going to give you some high-level totals. So you just get a quick glimpse about what's going on. But you'll also notice that here in the navigator, you'll also be able to see all of the OneDrives that were included in that scan. And I can at any time select a specific user's OneDrive and get the same detailed information, the same dashboards, the same reports, the same functionality. But rather than all of the drives, I'm looking at a particular user's OneDrive. So you do have the ability to drop in and get a little bit more of a detailed analysis for any of those users' OneDrives. Let me jump back to the top here and run you through a couple of reports. So the one dashboard we have built specifically for OneDrive for Business gives you this type of information. So it's going to tell you when it ran, when's the last time it ran, what's the date ranges. And the date ranges represent these different data points. Each data point here is one of those collections that you've run. The more collections you run, of course, is the more information you'll get, and then the more trending information that will be presented back to you. But it gives you information also about deltas. This is the changes, the new drives that were provisioned, the new documents, increased storage between this data collection period and the one prior. So you have that most up-to-date changes or updates that were made. Your content growth, this is going to be how much data has been added or removed. The document size gives you a nice pie chart. Pie chart represents top 10 if there are 10, or the top 8 if there's only 8 data points, but it'll show you the top 10 largest consumers of OneDrive for Business space. So not how much they were allocated, but actually how much they're consuming. So we can see the top 10 OneDrives there. You can see the top 10 most stored document extensions. So Word documents, PowerPoints, PDFs, MP3s, find out who's storing those. And then another dashboard panel here, which is the permissions. We'll look at in much more detail in just a moment. This is where you're going to see at a glance who's sharing what with whom, which email domains have access to some location inside of your tenant. And this could be internally, which is MetaVis, which is good, probably encouraged. Let's share and collaborate with our colleagues. External sharing may or may not be encouraged. And this will give you the ability to see that as well. So a couple of more reports here. You have a whole bunch inside of this menu in the middle. The first portion, or the second portion after the dashboards, is the in-depth reporting. So I can select any of these panels, or I can come over here and select a specific report, and you're going to get a much more in-depth understanding of this data that's being presented. So for this one, for example, is my extensions by size. Again, pie chart top 10. If I want to see all data points, I can switch over to the bar graph. But what this is showing, again, is the same information, all of the extensions and how much space they're consuming throughout your tenants, and I can select any portion of that representation, the graphical portion, and it will now show me, one, it's MP3s. I have 370 megs of MP3 files. Selecting that portion will now show me the breakdown. Where does that data exist? Whose OneDrive? So here I can see that Tony is the only person that's storing MP3s, excuse me again, and he's storing all of them. So I know that of those 370 megs, they're all coming from Tony's OneDrive. So maybe it's okay. Maybe I just want to send them an email and say, maybe that's not the best use of our space. However you want to remediate it, if at all, this just gives you that type of insight to find out what people are storing and what types of files, how many, or by size. The content growth also gives you a deeper understanding here of your trending and the breakdown as well. So it's not just the top 10 you're looking at, but you're actually looking at all of your OneDrives and how much total space they're consuming, how much they're consuming. So you have that information as well. The hierarchy report is a nice one for people who are more concerned just about the data. They're not really concerned about the visuals, the graphs, things like that. This just gives you a nice raw view as to what's being used or not used within your tenant. So you can see all of the OneDrives that were included in the scan, and you can see some basic information about those, including the number of lists, number of items in those lists, total size, number of views. Views is another great indicator of activity. If someone uploads 50 gigs to their OneDrive, the OneDrive's only been viewed twice, which means they're probably not actively using it. They're just using it as data storage, which again may or may not be okay, but it gives you another indicator about how people are actually using, if at all, they're using their OneDrives. And then the last updated status, that'll be the last time a document was created or modified. These can also be sorted, so you can sort by any of these column headers, views, sizes, items, last updated status. All that can also be sorted, and it can also be exported as well, so you can share this file with your colleagues if you need to. A couple things here in the activity. You have your site views, which again will show you how many times that they've been visited and viewed, not necessarily worked in, but just visited. Content activity gives you the ability to see the activity of the content itself. So other than, as opposed to the views, which means you're just going to that OneDrive, here you're actually looking at a report that shows you who's actually working with the content. And in our definition there, content activity is the creation or modification of data within their OneDrive. So actually working with the content, not just going to it and consuming it, if you will. Okay, so you have that as well. You have some user activity, most used or least frequent users within the within the OneDrive space. And then a couple of settings. Some of these more apply to the SharePoint side. One of them that I often like to show people here is the shared with. So one of the great things about Office 365, as you folks know, is that Microsoft has made it very easy to share. Share internally, and if enabled, share externally. The bad thing about Office 365 is Microsoft's made it so easy to share externally. So if it's turned on, if it's enabled within your tenant, and people start using it, it may be important for many number of reasons to know who's actually sharing. Internally, okay. Externally, maybe not okay. So again, this takes that same graphical representation we saw earlier, shows you all of the different email domains that have some type of sharing with inside of somebody's OneDrive. You can see the breakdown at the top. And then the analysis portion at the bottom shows you exactly which OneDrive is sharing and specifically with whom. So I can see all of the users that have that sharing capability being used are sharing it with somebody. I can see which domain they're sharing with, and I can see the exact email address in which they're sharing it. So I know, for this example, my OneDrive, I'm sharing it with a whole bunch of external people. Yahoo accounts, Outlook accounts, Gmail accounts. So maybe if I have business critical information in there, it may be important for you to go in and confront me and make sure that I'm not doing something I shouldn't be doing. So it gives you that type of ability. And of course, I can always come over here, select my OneDrive, and I can look specifically right at my OneDrive, and I can get much more detailed information about this type of sharing information as well. So it doesn't have to just stay at the top level like we see here with all the users' OneDrives. All right, a number of options as well are available here in the context menu. So some of these things that you want to do, we'll talk about backup in just a minute or two, but you can, of course, create backups from here. I can go right to that person's OneDrive if I need to just visit that inside of my browser. Run some content inventory reports if I need to see what data they're storing, and I need to have an output. I need a file that contains all of the content they're storing. Gives you a nice way to run an inventory report on your content. And you also have a number of options here for security analysis. So a lot of this stuff that we present with inside of the console is based off of the data collection period, which might have just completed, or maybe it was ran last night. With the data itself, number of files, content growth, it's probably okay if the data might be 12 hours or a day out of date, but when it comes to security, you definitely want that to be the most up-to-date information. I don't want to see who I shared with 3 days ago because I might not be sharing with that person anymore. I want to see exactly who I'm sharing with now. So all of these different security analysis reports that we have built in are all done in real time. So it's important in our minds that all security reports give you the most up-to-date information because it's the most critical when it comes to collaboration and SharePoint and OneDrive space. So any of these number of security reports that you see here, whether I'm looking at a particular person, so this Outlook user, if I need to know exactly what they have access to and how much access they have, I can simply run this analysis report. I drop in that user account, and it's going to generate a report for me that shows everything that that particular Outlook.com email address has access to and the permission they have to those objects, whether it be a document, a folder, bunch of content. Gives you that in-depth analysis. And then there's a couple others as well. Permission inventory reports, if I need to just see everybody who has access to it, not just a particular user, but I want to see all users. Every user, internal and external, that has access to any person's OneDrive. This gives you the ability to just generate a quick report with that detailed information. Again, all done in real time, so it's the most up-to-date it could possibly be. Okay, a couple of options you have up here in the ribbon as well. You have some provisioning. This, as we saw on the upload portion, can be done during the upload process. Or if you're not uploading and you just want to bulk provision OneDrives, you can certainly do that as well. Interface is very similar. Just put in your credentials, let the tool know which OneDrives you want to provision, and it'll go out there and create them all for you pretty quickly. A number of these reports can also be exported. We currently support export to PDF because it gives us a combination of both of the visuals as well as the analysis portion. So we figured that that was the best way to combine both of those elements. Some of the reports which do not contain the visuals, the hierarchy, for example, as we saw a moment ago, exports out to a CSV file or an Excel sheet so that you can view it in Excel or a text file if it's a CSV file. So it gives you a way to make that type of information portable as well. And we'll be adding a number of other options within the next week or two for other type of export options or formats, if you will. Okay. I feel like I should stop and ask questions, but I will continue on. Or Peter, is there any immediate questions that we want to take it now?
Yeah, there are a few questions about licensing and the app. So I've answered those questions in the question area for GoToMeeting. If anybody wants to ask any more, that's a good place, and we can review those. But a lot of questions about how the tool's licensed, and one question was interesting that I wasn't sure I answered correctly, but one of the folks was asking about pre-provisioning OneDrives using the MetaVis tool, because I guess it takes a while sometimes when a user first initially gets their OneDrive that, before they can use it. We wanted to see if there was any speed to be gained by using the tool to kind of pre-provision those and get those started.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. It is quicker. I understand exactly what you're talking about. I've seen it several times where it seems like it never ends, just constantly working on it. Yeah, so the process we use is quicker. It is limited by Microsoft's limitations. You can only do 200 per provisioning period. So you do have that limit. You can only select up to 200 and provision 200, but you can do that in chunks. So once the first 200 are done, you can get the next 200. But it is a little bit quicker than having the user go in there and click. And it gives you more administrative control, so you know exactly who's already done it and for whom you have to do it on their behalf.
Okay.
Okay.
And one of the other things, do ACL rules on shared folders migrate?
At this time, it does not. We do it not on the bulk wizard. If you want to do it drive by drive, file drive to OneDrive. There are certainly options to retain the permissioning. Adding it to the bulk wizard will be something we'll do in the very near future as well. Just some considerations we have to do with the shared with portion of OneDrive.
Okay. And besides OneDrive, are you able to use these reports on SharePoint sites? And the answer is yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Same type of reports. Let me just open one up real quick. The only difference is you're just going to point to the URL that's your SharePoint site as opposed to your OneDrive site. But you get the same information. And a lot of these reports make a little bit more sense, like versioning information, which versions have what, permission inheritance, required checkout, changing all those settings. So absolutely works on the SharePoint Online side as well.
Okay. All right, well, why don't you continue? We'll answer some of these other questions that have come up from these are good questions.
Great, thank you. So let's move on to the next component, which is backup. Backup, archive, and restore. So simple tool here. Again, this one works SharePoint Online as well, OneDrive, but obviously we're talking about OneDrive for Business today. A couple of high-level points about this tool is that it does provide the ability to back up single OneDrives. If you just want to back up one person's OneDrive, or one person's OneDrive more frequently than the rest, you certainly can, or you can back up all your OneDrives for business across your tenant. So it does have a little bit of flexibility with how you want to set it up. A lot of times people ask us, why do I need to back it up? It's in Microsoft's cloud. They should take care of it. They absolutely do. Part of your SLA, they'll take care of your disaster recovery aspects. So if a OneDrive mysteriously disappears, you call Microsoft, they'll put it back for you. Where we come in, what our tool fills in the gap is that it brings you peace of mind. So not everybody's comfortable with being 100% in Microsoft's cloud. They want that extra peace of mind where they have their data inside of their infrastructure. Their local file shares, all those ones that you're decommissioning because you're moving to the cloud, they become a great resource to start storing this backup information. Or if you're a completely virtual environment and you have no infrastructure, you can also store it in your cloud provider, Azure or S3, and we'll talk about that more in just a moment. Archiving. People leave companies. You most likely archive their Exchange, their mailbox, get all that data because you may need it in the future. Same thing certainly applies for OneDrive. As they leave the organization for whatever reason, quit, retire, terminate it, after you deactivate their account, Microsoft comes by 14 or so days later and deletes their OneDrive permanently. So all that data is forever lost. This gives you the ability to make sure you retain that data. So if it's ever needed in the future, for whatever purposes, you'll always have access to that data, which also goes into the unintentional or intentional misuse of OneDrive. Some people accidentally delete things, don't realize it for a couple of weeks or months, overwrite things, files become corrupted. Some people may purposely, maliciously do things to their OneDrive as they're leaving. This will take care of it because you've already been backing it up. You've already archived all their data, so whatever they've done or they intend to do, you have a safety measure in which you can go back and restore that. So it handles that. And also the restores, as we'll talk about in a moment, are very granular. So it doesn't have to be an all or nothing approach. You'll get to decide what you want to restore, from which backup you want to restore, and of course how you want to perform that restore operation. So a number of ways in which this tool set can complement what Microsoft offers out of the box with your SLA. Okay, so again, this tool is also designed to be fully automated and scheduled. So you don't have to come in here and kick off a backup every day or once a week. You simply schedule it to take place, and the tool will take care of the rest for you. You do have the options here for local or cloud storage. Local, of course, will be local to MetaVis. Your file shares, network drives, external drives, whatever you want to store within inside of your network, or cloud storage. Cloud storage will be either in Azure or S3, whichever you prefer. And this is a bring your own storage. You're not storing it onto our servers. You're storing it onto your servers. So all of your data is your data inside of your infrastructure. The only difference between these two options is just that, the physical location. All the features, functionality, scheduling that we'll talk about now are identical, just where it's actually going to end up within the backups. Okay, so let's just click on local to show you what that looks like. So really quick, very simple interface here. What you're doing is you're creating a project. Your project will become available over here in your backup navigator once it completes, and that'll list all of your snapshots. We'll take a look at that in a moment. URL will be the URL to the location. Could be a SharePoint site, could be a specific OneDrive, or it could be all of your OneDrives. And again, you're going to use that URL we've seen a few times, which will be your SharePoint admin URL. This tells the tool that you want to back up all your OneDrives. And then if you chose local location, of course, where do you want to store it? It'll allow you to go through there and select where you want to store that data. A couple of options here, most notable for the OneDrive space as opposed to SharePoint. You're going to have permissions, so this will make sure that all of those permissions that people are setting up, you're sharing with your colleagues, all of that stuff that they've assigned within their OneDrive also gets included with the backup. Contents, obviously, all of their data with the version history if you choose, and with the metadata. So it'll also be able to back up and restore metadata. Metadata in OneDrive side is most likely going to be your dates, created at, modified at, your users, created by, modified by values. It doesn't have the same typical metadata that you're used to over in the SharePoint world, but certainly does apply here as well. Some archive options. Delete from source means exactly what it sounds like. This is going to delete all of that content from the OneDrive after it's been backed up. So use it cautiously if you use it at all. And the filtering options available here as well. A couple of options for retentions. We do support fulls, incrementals, and differentials, and you can apply any retention policy. You can apply it now, you can apply it later, you can change it or remove it, but this will allow you to keep tighter controls over how much data you're currently backing up. And what this tells the tool is any backups that are older than the value specified in days will simply be deleted or purged from that backup location. This is done silently, so it will not prompt you, you will not confirm it. This will just simply go on a scheduled basis, and any of those backups, fulls, incrementals, or differentials older than these values will be deleted from your backup location. Not from OneDrive, not from SharePoint, just from your backups. Okay, and of course, if you don't want that to happen, don't apply it, and your backups will be kept indefinitely. Scripting components available here, and also obviously the schedule piece. So you can come through and you can kick these off and say, let's run it every Friday night at perhaps 8 p.m. and you can let it run over the course of the weekend. As those backups do start to finish and pile up, you'll get them over here in the navigator. This will show you all of your currently running projects, all of your backups. Inside of those will be all of your snapshots, ordered by date and by time, and also by type, full, incremental, or differential. And this will show you all of the available backups that you've created in the past. If they've already been purged as part of your retention policy, they obviously won't show up here. These are only the ones that are currently available within that location. And then inside of that will be the data. So if you have a particular site or a particular OneDrive, you'll see everything that was included back on that time, February 22nd. This is what was picked up in the backup. Sites, lists, OneDrives, and of course the content that was inside of each of those lists will all be visible for you as well. On the OneDrive side, of course, what you'll see is the same type of timestamp, March 12th. But what you'll also see is all of the OneDrives. So this will show you a listing, alphabetized, of all of the OneDrives that were included with that backup back in March 12th. And you can jump inside of any OneDrive that you need to, and you can see the data that was included within inside of that OneDrive at the time of backup, again March 12th, and you can see all that information with your metadata, and of course if you have any folders, it'll expose that as well. So it also gives you a way to visualize back in time what was included with each backup operation. Okay. All of this data is stored normalized in your backup location, so these Word documents are stored as Word documents, PDFs, PowerPoints, video files, anything like that. It's all stored normalized, so you'll be able to access it through the console, the MetaVis console, or you'll be able to access it from your backup location. So it's not going to be proprietary to MetaVis. Your data is your data, and it's stored as it would be stored in any other file location. Okay, a couple of other options we have built up in here, the ribbon, is archiving. This is different than the archiving option we talked about with the configuration of the backups. This takes all of your previous data and allows you to make it portable. So maybe periodically, this can also be scheduled. Every month, 6 months, 12 months, you want to take all of this data before it's purged, before it's deleted, and you want to export it out. This will take that content that's been backed up in the past 12 months, compress it down into an archive for you, password protected, and then you can take that component and you can move it to cheaper storage. Cloud-based storage, tape, DVD, offsite, whatever you need to, it gives you that nice portable file that you can then move to another location. In the case that you need to restore from it, you can always bring it back into MetaVis using either of these two options here, and then it simply expands itself and then gives you the same type of interface. So although it's been moved from its original location, it can be brought in and accessed as if it never did leave. So you do have the ability to also bring it back in using the import option as well. Okay, so let's talk really quick here about the restore process. So if you ever need to restore, of course, hopefully you don't, but most likely you will at some point. Restore process is also very simple. You'll have all of your different snapshots. So the first thing you need to determine is when do you want to restore from? March 12th, February 2nd, January 3rd. What you need to do is just simply locate that backup you want to restore from. You can drop into it, go to the person's OneDrive in which you need to restore from, deleted file, corrupted file, whatever the case is, file's no longer there. So I can simply go into that person's OneDrive, see all of their lists, of course, see the content like we saw a moment ago. This is all the content from March 12th, 7:08 p.m. And I can simply come in here and I can select the data that I want to restore. Could be just this one file, could be both of these files, could be 500 files, however many you need to. I simply select it and I choose restore. And this is going to be an in-place restore operation. So it'll take the selected data, its versions, its metadata, its permissions, assuming you chose all those options when you created the backup, and it restores it in place back to that person's OneDrive. So it'll put it back into place for them, and then you can send them an email when it's done and say, here's all your data, let me know if you have any other problems. It'll be right there for them. The other option we have for restore is out-of-place restore. And what this allows you to do is to select that content, any number of content, pieces of data, files, folders, non-document items, if they have calendars or things like that in their OneDrive, and I can restore it out of place, which is to another person's OneDrive. So I can simply, again, select a file, a few files, and I can say that this person left, they're no longer with the organization, so I need to take all of that content and I need to restore it to the person who is coming in to replace them, or to their managers, so that the manager can decide what to do with all that data. But the process, again, is very simple. You just select the data you want to restore from, and you can just drag and drop it over to that other person's OneDrive. And that'll tell the tool that I want to restore it into the admin's drive. And then you can put all the data there, then they can decide what they want to do with it. So this will give you a nice, simple way to go through and do an out-of-place restore to another location. Okay, so there's a couple of things here, a couple of scenarios or use cases you can certainly use for the backup or potentially the archiving solution to give you some more control over the actual content itself. It's important to note that all of this is logged as well, whether we're doing migrations, whether we're doing analysis scans, security modifications, backups and restores. All that information is logged and stored within inside of MetaVis, so you'll always have accountability for whatever action was taken. It'll give you a timestamp when it was taken, and it'll give you the results, successful or not successful. If it was not successful, it'll also tell you why. So you will have that accountability built into the tool, and that'll also give you a history option, which will show you every past operation within inside of the console. So you can always review what happened last week or last month and understand the results of that. Okay, so let me quickly now, just for the last few moments.
Okay, thanks a lot, Chris. Oh, sorry, Chris, go ahead. Yeah, we have a few more minutes and then.
Yeah, I was just going to touch really quick on the informant piece. So just really quick, just the next 2 minutes or so. Another aspect of OneDrive for more of the advanced users or for some of the organizations that are more highly regulated, it's not only important to know what people are sharing or how many MP3 files they're storing, things like that, but it may also be important to understand the types of content they're storing. So do those Word documents, do those PDFs, do they contain proprietary information, do they contain PII information? Some of that might be more of a concern for organizations because maybe it's not meant to be in OneDrive, or certainly maybe it's not meant to be shared within the OneDrives. So we do have another component built in here which will allow you to run those type of content discovery scans. So I'm not looking at high-level metadata, visits to sites, things like that. I'm looking at the actual data itself. And we do this through business rules in which you can create yourself based off of any number of values. Could be metadata, could be file types if you want to be very specific. It could be some generic PIIs like social security numbers, credit card information, things like that. And we also do support regular expression. Regular expression, of course, allows you to write any custom rule that'll meet the specific requirements that your organization is looking to accomplish. So ingredients, proprietary information, code names for upcoming products or software, things like that. You can write any number of regular expressions that will look for, identify, find, and report on who's storing that content. So it goes out, create any number of rules here. Maybe I want to look for my social security numbers, look for a regular expression. I can do ands or ors. Most people just want to write a report. Report is non-destructive. It just simply tells you, yes, content was found that met your criteria, and here is where it was found. So then you can decide how you want to remediate it, if at all. But it'll simply tell you where it was discovered. And this content discovery doesn't just look at the metadata again. It actually is opening files. It's opening Word docs, PDFs, text files, any text-based object. It does a quick scan through the body of the content looking for whatever you tell it to look for. So it gives you a really nice in-depth discovery on the actual data. And it goes out, can crawl across your file shares. If you're still in file shares or before you upload all the data into OneDrive, you want to make sure you're not yourself uploading PII information or proprietary information. So you can certainly go through and you can scan your OneDrives prior, any number of file shares, local drives, network drives, map drives, things like that. Or once you do get into OneDrive, of course, you can go through and you can start scanning your OneDrives. So it gives you the ability to keep on top of what people are using. This tool is also scripted. It's also schedulable, so you can automate the process. And it gives you some nice recurring reports, which will allow you to get a better understanding of the actual content itself that your end users are storing within inside of OneDrive for Business. Okay, so with that, I will stop now. And if there's questions, we can certainly address those.
Yeah, so Chris, thanks a lot. That was a really good overview of what's available in OneDrive and how MetaVis fills the gaps. There's been a bunch of questions, and a lot of them have to do with some of the backup. You know, if a user account is deleted and under which account. I think the clarification there is that if somebody deletes a OneDrive account, maybe somebody leaves the organization and their account gets deleted, that information will be deleted by Microsoft at some interval, whether it's 15 days or 30 days, just over time, because that user is no longer there. How MetaVis works is it allows you to create a local copy of that content that you can save and then archive. And then if you decide you want to restore that information, maybe you have a new employee and you want to carry that information forward to them, you can use the tool to basically drag and drop all that content to the new employee or SharePoint site or wherever else you want to drop that information. So some other questions are: do you have any connectors for fast search, which we have on premise? So MetaVis doesn't really do anything with fast. What we do is when we put things into SharePoint or OneDrive, fast can be set up to scan those locations. Chris, I don't know if fast is automatically connect with an on-premise connector with OneDrive. Do you know that?
I don't believe it does yet.
Okay.
I think that's
yeah.
in their roadmap for Microsoft.
Yeah, I can't imagine that won't be supported to be able to include that as a data source, but I'm sure it will. And then another thing is, can Discovery operate when content is secured using Azure Rights Management? So I think what maybe they're getting at is they're using the rights management product where they're encrypting the data at rest in SharePoint, and they want to be able to scan that. So the answer to your question there is only if you provide the key that allows you to unencrypt that document and take a look at it. So if you do have access to those keys, then you'll be able to see it, but if you do not, therefore you will not be able to see what's in the document because you do not have permission to. So if there's any other questions, just type them in the questions area, and we'll try to get those answered. Alternatively, you can download a trial of our OneDrive Management Suite and take a look at it, or you can contact sales, or you can send us an email at info@metavistech.com. If you have any further questions, we'd be happy to arrange a separate demo or get into that information. But the best way to kind of work with MetaVis is to download a trial from our website and give it a try on your OneDrives and see what you think, and work with our organization to ask any questions you may have about this great new opportunity with such vast amounts of storage and management capability of your unstructured information. So, Chris, anything else to add?
Nope. Just want to thank everybody again for your time. And let's go watch the soccer game.
Okay. All right. Take care. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, everyone. Bye now.
Bye-bye.